Hey everybody, welcome to Chuck Yates Needs a Job, the podcast. Got a little twist for you this week. Justin Gauthier wanted me to come on his podcast. I wanted him coming on my podcast, so anyway, we said screw it, we did it together. So anyway, I hope you enjoy. I He got fired from Kane, now we ain't got no shame. So we started a pod, Chuck Yates needs a job.
Hey everyone, welcome back and thanks for tuning in. I'm here at the Digital Wildcatters headquarters with my man Chuck Yates, he, him, his, Galactic Viceroy at Digital Wildcatters. Viceroy. What is, okay, so.
Okay.
What the hell is that?
Here's this.
Viceroy. That was
So
Viceroy.
LinkedIn makes you put a title in. I don't know if you know this. And like when you get fired, unemployed dude is unappealing as a title, right? And so I'm sitting there like, all right, what the hell? And Galactic Viceroy sounded cool, right? So I put it in. Swear to God, somebody texts me, dude, congratulations on the new job. And I'm like,
no
oh,
way.
Really? Oh yeah, no, it's great. So I text back. I'm just following my dreams.
Right.
And the dude texts back, I'm sure you'll crush it. Now he's probably out there going, Yates is off his rocker. Yates thinks he's a Galactic Viceroy.
But he was encouraging and supportive of it regardless.
Very encouraging.
That's a true friend, man.
And you know what my email address is at Digital Wildcatters? Galactic Viceroy at Digital Wildcatters.
Dude, so that is hilarious.
That's that.
I have to ask, have you ever had the green banner open to work? I mean, are you into the banner situation? Like, what do you think about that?
Oh, I don't even know what that is. I'm kind of
well, I know you're big on Twitter, but on LinkedIn, if a lot of people are looking for jobs, they'll have their profile picture, and then there's kind of this green swoop that says,
"This has been the whole problem." Okay, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, you had that.
No, I mean, I've jokingly said that the purpose of the podcast and my Twitter presence is to make sure I'm unemployable. Because I figure, I mean, like I'm fundamentally the laziest person I've ever met. So this really works for me, being unemployed.
But arguably, like you're probably lazy when you have to do things you don't like to do. But if you are passionate and you love something, whatever that looks like, chances are you're probably not that lazy.
And that's kind of fair. That's kind of fair. I mean, particularly if you put it like a little bit of a dose of narcissism in with it, you know, it's like, oh, I get to be on camera. I kind of work to make sure I'm on camera. Like when you call, I'm like, yes, sir, I'd love to be on your podcast.
Right. No, that's great.
No, so around here, Colin will say, hey, could you do this for me? No, that sounds like a job.
Yeah,
I'm
done that.
There's an element of that.
Yeah, but you have a very unique background. And by that, I mean, you Rice MBA graduate, right? What year did you graduate?
So here was the story. So undergrad Rice, 91.
91, okay.
Semester of UT Law School in the fall of 91. Big, thick book, tiny print, no pictures. That's really bad. So I dropped out of law school. And I just defaulted back into Rice Business School because I didn't know what else to do.
Gotcha.
And figured out finance. And that was kind of the first aha moment. Because I really thought undergrad, political science, I'm going to law school, I'm going to be the governor of Texas. That's my career path. And just hated law school. And so when I figured out finance, that was kind of like, okay, this is my jam.
That was, okay.
That was my jam.
I mean, because so 27-ish years in oil and gas and up to executive management, right? And I mean, you did very well. But then you became a podcaster, content creator, Galactic Viceroy. And, at the industry's leading events and media company, here we are at Digital Wildcatters. But between all of that, you've spent some really interesting times with really interesting people. And it was maybe like a few months ago, you on Twitter, you'll all of a sudden randomly post you with like some celebrities, or you're on fucking TMZ. And so I'm thinking, like, and just in my mind, I'm like, when I met you at Energy Tech Night, I was like, man, I got to get to know this guy. Like, he has something, he's way more than, what the book cover shows. And then, of course, getting to know you and then listening to your podcast. And then all of a sudden you've got these pictures. I'm like, what in the world? So I'm actually really genuinely curious, aside from energy and oil and gas and everything, we'll get into that. But like, how did you all of a sudden get in front of these celebrities? Like, you had Migos, you took a picture when Takeoff, thing happened. Then you got some with some other like comedians, and then was it like kiss or somebody. Like you've got all these, like anytime someone says something, all of a sudden you got a picture of you with them. And it's like, so how in the world, and
so like
explain this all to me. Cause I'm
like
blown away.
Like I tell my kids, pretty happening dude. Wouldn't you want to hang out with me if you were kissed?
Yeah.
Okay. No. So, you know, some people like to go play golf. You know, some people like to hunt and fish. I mean, we all kind of have our hobbies.
Of course.
As weird as this sounds, and it probably comes from, in all seriousness, kind of this insecurity and shallow nature. I like stalking celebrities.
Interesting.
I mean, I just do. My buddy Fish says I have the greatest celebrity radar on the planet. I can walk in and go, oh my God, she's the B-level star in this reality TV show that ran from 97 to 99. And I go get a picture with her.
What?
And I don't know what it is. But anyway, it's kind of fun. So,
yeah. So, okay.
And part of this actually kind of started with my brother. I've got 3 brothers. One of my brothers and I used to play a stupid game called What Do You Say to a Celebrity When You Meet Them? And we would call each other at all hours of the night. And the first manifestation of this game was we were in the Houston airport. We're like walking out of the Continental Lounge. This is back before United Continental. We're walking out and we bumped into Peter Noon, who is the lead singer of Herman's Hermits.
Okay.
And my brother Jay stares at him, and it's kind of awkward because we literally do bump into each other. And Jay just starts screaming at the top of his lungs, Henry VIII, I am. Because they had a song about, you know, a lady who had married, you know, 7 Henrys and he was the 8th Henry. So Henry VIII is. Yeah. So we start screaming. And Peter Noon looks at us and goes, oh my God, I'm going to get killed, and runs off. And Jay's like chasing him through the Continental Lounge. I don't know what came over Jay. We were pretty drunk. But he's screaming, she would not marry a Dick or a Sam. So anyway, it was so funny that we just started doing that. And so we would always walk up to celebrities and we'd have something funny to say or whatever. And kind of the pinnacle of that game is I saw O.J. Simpson in the San Jose airport. And I go over there, I go, OJ, man, I kind of pull him down. I'm like, hey man, I got a line on the Real Killers. And he looked at me, freaked out, and ran off.
No way. Yeah. What?
So anyway, it kind of
nuts to go do that to O.J. Simpson is
well, I didn't think he would kill me in the San Jose airport.
Yeah, hopefully not.
But so anyway, it's kind of always sparked the thing. So I'm the annoying guy that will always go take the picture with the celebrity. So that's why I've got all those pictures.
You mentioned something earlier, and to tie into this as well, but you said, you know, maybe some of it comes from like insecurities or something like that. But like, so I read something not long ago, but there's 2 things that really fuel us to sort of overcome or do something amazing. And a lot of it is based on our insecurities.
Right.
So what based off of what you know about yourself, because it sounds like you have a pretty good level of self-awareness. What about it
takes 54 years to get there, but yeah, go ahead.
Right. No, and it does. And I think there's some wisdom that comes with that as well. But like, what type of insecurities have led you to be, because you did really well. And again, knowing what I know, I think you did fairly well in oil and gas and energy and finance. Is that a part of it? Or, I mean, is there any connection there?
That's a good question. So kind of thinking there, I mean, Brene Brown in her research on us basically says that ultimately our insecurities come back to, do I feel worthy of love? You know, that ultimately anytime you're agitated or whatever, anytime you're going through your bad behavior, drinking too much, whatever, you start tracing it back, you unpeel it. And it's, do we feel worthy? And we all have that issue, right? And I think one of the things that kind of, you know, I wound up getting divorced after being married for almost 25 years. And one of the things I figured out from that was too much of my sense of self-worth was wrapped up in my ex-wife's approval. And so when that got denied, man, fucked me. I mean, I was a mess during the separation and the divorce, and kind of led to a lot of therapy. I've paid for more therapy than the gross national product of a third world country.
Okay.
You know, so you peel that back, and in looking back, you're like, oh yeah, I was the kid that, you know, had to be the lead star in the high school drama play. You know, I was the, you know, kid that was always seeking approval. And where that came from, Is it I'm the oldest of 4 boys? Was I just born that way genetically? But it's wild if you really start digging in and kind of unpacking everything.
Yeah.
How a lot of this stuff, I hate to say Freud was right, but Freud's right. A lot of this stuff goes back to childhood on things.
No, it does. And actually I'm, for a long time speaking, kind of on that is when I look back now on really what's driving me, and I've spent, I went through a period where I graduated high school. All I want to do is go make as much money as possible, go work drilling rigs. I want to, get promoted and do this. And it's like, at that point, it was like success and money was the motivation behind everything. And then come to a point now where I'm sort of, I call myself middle age, I don't know, 36 years old, reached a point of, I guess financial success, and however you want to define that is everyone has their own definition. However, reached a point and now it's like, okay, really trying to dig deep and figure out, like, it sounds funny. It's like, in the movie Zoolander.
Yeah.
And he looks in the puddle and his face is all like kind of messed up from the puddle. He's like, who am I?
Right.
Like I have that replaying in my head. I'm like, who am I? Why am I here? And what's my purpose? And ultimately, I look back at what I was, as a child. It's like, what did I really love as a child? And what was I extremely good at that came natural to me? And I'm trying to bridge that, because what I've done now up until this point, it wasn't necessarily what I never grew up wanting to drill holes in the ground and be, in upstream oil and gas.
Yeah, nobody did.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, and while I do find a sense of satisfaction and purpose doing that, because for the greater good of providing energy to the world, clearly I'm part of that ecosystem, which is quite satisfying. But like, there's other parts of that too. It's like, I feel like sometimes there's more. And so I'm spending a lot of time reflecting back into my childhood. Is like, why am I the way I am? And so it's kind of like, not to get into that side of, the conversation, but I can identify with what you're saying in terms of like really peeling back the onion. I think as we get older, we start to really understand ourselves. And even, for my mom, she's 78, almost 80 years old, and almost having to like treat her as not necessarily a child, but, trying to help take care of her mentally. And then her telling me things about herself as a child and then me as a child, it really like starts to really connect the dots. So it's this weird kind of, I guess, paradigm shift sometimes when you really dig into it.
So my priest, Patrick, who's been on the podcast a couple of times, Patrick Miller, we've done a couple of men's retreats where 10 of us just hole up in my house for, call it 48, 72 hours. And one of the things Patrick does to kind of break the ice is he gets you a sheet of paper and he says, okay, let's go up the tree. So tell me about your parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents if you can. And you kind of go, whatever. And you start doing that. You realize that so much stuff is driven by things that happened generations ago. I mean, Patrick's, I'm making this up because I can't remember the exact, but, Patrick's great-grandfather decides to go do something and gets killed in action. So his dad grows up without a dad. So his dad leaves him.
Yeah.
And, Patrick grows up having to deal with an absentee father, and you realize, no, that started 85 years ago. And it's amazing how when you do that exercise with 10 people, everybody cries. I mean, you're at some point you're crying as you go kind of back through this.
Yeah.
And then he always closes out kind of the 48 hours of 72 hours of, okay, people are going to be sitting in a room 80 years from now doing this. They're going to go back and you're going to be the great-grandfather. How much did you say about your great-grandfather? You said 3 or 4 words. So what are those 3 or 4 words you want them to think about?
Wow.
About you. And it makes a wild kind of circle on it. But
yeah,
sort of what you figure out doing that is, one, you figure out just so much stuff. You're dealing with baggage from the past. You also kind of figure out the 7-year itch is not just a made up thing. We really do run in 7-year cycles. How old did you say you were? 36?
36, yeah.
So you just if you were exploring life, soul searching the last 2 or 3 years, you're at the end of a 7-year cycle, and that's pretty typical.
Yeah.
For stuff, and you'll kind of think you pulled it together, and then you're going to start hitting 40, 41, 42, and you're going to kind of go back through that stuff. And so
fascinating.
And and I think kind of the other big thing that you have to wrestle with is if your sense of self-worth is something that's temporal, is something, if it's a person that can die, or it's a person that can break up with you and go away, if it's, somebody you're no longer friends with or all, that really gets wild. Because then you're at the mercy of something. And so what part of mine was in terms of getting right with stuff, and I don't want to get preachy here because I would be.
Oh, you can get preachy.
I would be like the least poster boy for any sort of church. But, mine kind of went to a lot of God, in terms of just figuring out, okay, why do I have worth? Why should I feel okay being Chuck Yates? And so I really kind of got, instead of things of this earth, I kind of got more grounded in spiritual type stuff, even though I still drank too much, I still, cheat on this and that and do all these bad things. But anyway, I kind of did that, and that really helped because people are always like, oh man, you got fired. That sucked. And I was like, it's Tuesday, man. I'd already kind of dealt with my demons, call it, 3 or 4 years before. So I was like, great, I don't have to go to the office tomorrow, whatever. And, you go, okay, I got to sell the jet. So I sold the jet. Now I drive a Hyundai and it's great.
Great mileage. Yeah. No. So would you say, and again, we'll get in, all the listeners are like, wow, this is different than normal. But I think this is important because I think these are conversations that, especially us as men, as we get older, we sort of lose our sense of like deep relationships where you can have these conversations. So I think it's really cool that you do those retreats. And talking, before we move on, you're talking about sort of like self-esteem and self-worth. I think for the most part, most people's self-esteem and self-worth is wrapped up in the judgment of others. And so we do things like you almost said, like kind of like doing things to probably get approval from somebody or whatever.
Right.
But the reality is like, where people seek approval from other people is like a lot of times those people don't even really give a shit about them in the first place. And especially when like social media, it's like, oh, I'm going to flex on Instagram so I can seek approval from this masses of people. But like the reality is no one really cares. You know what I mean? It's like, for me, my self-esteem and purpose is wrapped up in the happiness of my wife and my 2 kids. Beyond that, It's like, I don't really, and then once I kind of realized, because for a long time, same thing growing up, like I always wanted to have the best house parties. I always wanted to have the most friends. I always wanted to, be this captain of football. Like same kind of, it was like, I always wanted to be in that spotlight. And it's like, did I really enjoy it? Or was it more to just like have that kind of sense of like, oh, everyone knows me and all this and stuff. And so, again, like kind of reflecting back, but
if you look at Brene Brown's research, what she will say the pressure point for a man is, so with women, it's body image. That is really what makes them feel unworthy, is dealing with that. And a lot of that's society and magazines, wherever. Yeah. With men, it's the ability not to fix something. That's really where we break down. And you can,
fascinating,
and you can look at, it's probably a little bit of a stretch, but you can look at, I only got 3 likes on this Instagram post as maybe I'm not able to fix something. But usually our big pressure point is not being able to fix something. And I think a lot of the problem men and women have is a man can't fix something. He loses his job or whatever, can't provide for his family. And the wife thinks she's being supportive. That's Colin's chair. He's got to pop it up. He's so short.
No,
he's got to pump it up.
I hit my leg on it and it just does. Sorry, that was a distraction.
But a lot of times the women will say things like, well, you should work on your resume today. And they think they're being supportive. Actually, what the man hears is, you can't fix it. Yeah. And that's our pressure point. And that's really hard to navigate. Because it takes a realization on your part as a man to go, she's not telling me I can't fix it. She's trying to help. Yeah. But I think it's incumbent upon the wife too to just say, he knows he needs to work on his resume.
Sure.
He really does.
Yeah. Objectively, it makes sense. Right?
It makes sense. And so, it's you get into this kind of deep sort of stuff, and why I don't actually think it's weird that we're talking about this on an energy podcast. We had the mind fuck of all mind fucks over the last 3 years. We had minus $37 oil. Everybody lost their jobs. Yeah. There was a lot of mental health issues. Yeah. And so that's number one. COVID did a number on all of us because of that. And number 3, the boom and bust cycle of our industry, I don't think we've ever been mentally well in our industry. Over the, since Titusville, we have not been well because it's always boom and bust.
Man,
and so I don't think this is weird that we're actually talking about it. And what I've found on my podcast is when I do this type stuff, it's so funny. Whenever I turn in a podcast around here, Colin's always like, all right, how long is it? And did somebody cry?
It's like therapy sessions for us oilfield folks.
We were hugging it out. But, the engagement I get with, I did my first podcast of the year was 7 minutes long. I sat right there and recorded it on my iPhone. And I basically just said, hey, 2022 sucked for me. I don't know why. Nothing bad happened to me. I may have been clinically depressed. I wasn't. I promise you. I'll call if I'm going to jump off a building. It wasn't that.
Yeah.
It was just kind of blue and a funk. Yeah. And I kind of half-assed everything, and I didn't have any consequences for my inaction. If I didn't drop a podcast one week, who cares?
Sure.
Kind of half-assed that roast I do every year for charity, and we had the third largest take we've ever had and stuff. And I really didn't have to face a consequence till the girl I was dating dumped me for not being engaged. She dumped me for not being loving enough and all that. And quite frankly, she was right. Okay. I mean, I was half-assing the relationship and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I had to really get right with I had to figure my shit out and dig into it. Fair enough. I did a lot of that. And I got this wild, so kind of, let's call it December 10th to New Year's Eve. I have this wild arc that has me on the road, seeing Roger Krieger in Corpus at one point, going to the Selena Museum the next day to, I swear to God, I had a burning bush moment on par with Moses, where I literally spoke to God.
Okay. Tell us more about that.
It's going to come out on Chuck Yates Needs a Wife. We'll save it for that. So that's what I teased. And I basically put a stake in the ground. Now I have to actually go film this thing. But I said, I'm going to tell the story of this because me and the girlfriend are back together.
Congrats.
So,
cool.
Maybe. I say that on her behalf, not mine.
Sure.
But no. And so anyway, I think just a lot of us in this industry have had to go through it because of the boom bust. And quite frankly, our industry's dangerous. I mean, you can literally die any day out in the field.
Yeah.
And
that's true. You can't say that for many industries.
Yeah, you're under that stress. And so I actually think it's cool we're sitting here talking about this because I think the single best thing we could do to our industry is figure out some way to deal with our mental health issues.
Wow.
I really do that. And I don't know what that is. I've spent some time thinking about it and I want to do something. I don't know if it's, is there an app we can have that sits there and helps monitor people so a company can say, hey, man, I got to get Justin out of there for a while. We got to work on something. Is there, because you're seeing as in everything, energy is always 15 years behind everybody.
Yeah.
Unless it's, unless it is, being the most technologically sophisticated to drill a well, right?
Yep.
We do that really well.
Right.
Bookkeeping, we're 15 years behind. We use ledgers still, mental health type stuff. A lot of industries are spending a lot of time focusing on that. I mean, the girlfriend actually partner in a large accounting firm. I mean, if they give you a quiz pretty regularly and they ferret out, there's family member problems here for addiction, or there's, money problems here, there, whatever the mental health thing is. And they've got therapists on staff that are hitting it.
Wow.
Hey, you need to come to this session and stuff. And so there needs to be something like that in oil and gas. Cause
it's very tolling on people. Would you say that majority, if not all, people have a degree of mental health issues?
Oh, I think we all do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all do it at some level.
Right.
And it gets pronounced and we figure out how to deal with it. This is kind of an interesting stat. I know you think I'm changing the topic, but I promise I'll bring it back. When the Navy SEALs go out and look for potential candidates, they actually go and try to find people that had childhood trauma.
You mentioned that in your last podcast, right?
Okay, yeah, I've talked about this before, and they want somebody that's dad abused them or whatever. because they're used to running on adrenaline the whole time.
That is,
no data to suggest this, and I'm not impugning anyone in the oil field, because anyone in the oil field, greatest people on the planet. But wouldn't surprise me if you see a lot of that, and because they're drawn to that adrenaline,
For sure. Wow.
And you start thinking about that. Well, how do you deal with that? You drink too much, go prostitutes, you gamble, you do drugs, and you know.
No, I think it all ties together. And I think these conversations are, again, they're important, and I don't think, I don't think there's really, I don't think that people should shun away from it. And again, like I said earlier, and to the point of you made with the retreats that you do with those gentlemen, I think more and more needs to happen. And to your point on creating something or having some sort of program or a system or a way for folks to deal with it other than energy FinTwit, which I think is helpful. But yeah, again, I think there's a need for it, and who knows, you might unlock the Holy Grail there. So
yeah, and one of the things I've said on a podcast before, so I hate kind of repeating it, but I think and it's horrible because we're not wired this way as men, but the only way you deal with those feelings of being unworthy is to talk about them. Shame hates words, is a way to say it. And that's so hard for us to admit to, of things we did.
Yeah.
But what I always say is, if you decide to do it, there is a 99% chance that the person you choose to do it with, like, you and I go get a beer, I want to talk to you and do it, 99% of the time, you always say back, me too.
You're right.
I felt that way too. Yeah, the thing I love so much about my priest Patrick is I'll go fess up to these horrific things I've done in my life, and he always fesses up to something even worse. I'm like, dude, you're a priest. And he goes, I know it's really bad. I shouldn't do that. But I mean, because I mean, and if there's one kind of message, and I'm being a little preachy here, but if there's one message, if you're feeling shitty, go talk to someone. I advise go see a professional, because there is a skill set of peeling back the onion up there. And
they work off a certain framework that can be effective.
Yeah. But at a minimum, go talk to a friend, go talk to a buddy, because I've never had an instance where I've been embarrassed to admit something and I've fessed up to it and I've ever gone, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. Well, I think and I know Digital Wildcatters, and there's a lot of startup activity happening, and that's one of the common denominators I find talking to CEOs or founders of startups, is it's like it takes a toll on their mental health. And so I think even you tack on oil and gas to then starting a startup within oil and gas. I mean, you got to be pretty mentally tough to be able to withstand. It's kind of like Josh Young's. I always love Josh Young when he talks about bison interests. He's like, I'm like a bison into the storm, and it's like that just like to me sums up oil and gas. It's like we're always into the storm.
Right.
Yeah. So
the moment we're not having the storm, it's right around the corner.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, before we keep going, I do have to take a moment to tell everyone about my new sponsor, Inflow Control. They're a technology company that helps oil companies improve the efficiency of oil production while reducing the industry's environmental impact with their autonomous inflow control valve technology. This technology improves oil production by reducing unwanted gas and water, which ultimately enables mature oil fields to be more profitable by supporting oil production from zones that would typically be bypassed. This provides companies and its stakeholders with lower carbon oil and higher profitability. To learn more, click the link in the show notes, or simply check them out on LinkedIn or at inflowcontrol.no, hence a Norwegian company. But no, they're a great group, so appreciate all the support there.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Let's do this, because I seriously believe this. I know we've had a pretty good run of prices. We hit, 123, I think, was our high, and we're back in the 80s now, and that's a far cry from, minus 37. Nickel and dimes matter.
Yeah.
They really matter, and we're shitty as a business about nickel and dimes. Hitting home runs, we do that great. We can go drill a wildcat well and hit something. We can 3D seismic image something and all that. But the nickels and dimes, the block and tackling, kind of the plumbing and stuff, really, really matters today. And if we want to be in industry and be around for a while, you got to do that.
Yeah. No.
And so that's why I love your sponsor on that.
Yeah. No, I
that shit matters.
It does. I mean, if you can help, if you can reduce your water content in your oil production by way of, deploying some technology that ultimately gives you better returns. And I mean, again, it may be $10 a day, but over the course of a field, especially, if you extrapolate that over the life cycle of a well, it matters. And like you said,
Walmart does it every day. You know, I mean, tick on down the list of all the great American companies, they do it. And we don't do it in oil. We don't do it in oil and gas typically. And we wonder why Wall Street shits on us.
Yeah. You know? So why is that, you think? I mean, I have my thoughts, but why do you think that is we do a bad job at doing that?
So I've always felt like as an industry, we got dollars as a hedge, meaning, generally speaking, higher oil and gas prices led to a recession, right? I mean, it's a higher cost on society, right?
Yep.
And so as an investor, you have a portfolio. So I need to own some oil and gas in case it runs up to counter the rest of the market. Notice in there, I didn't say, I need to find a well-run company. I need to find a company that has a great play. I didn't need to find, no, I need a hedge.
Yeah.
And so because of that, in effect, what you're rewarded for, if you're just kind of the hedge dollars, is you're almost rewarded for hitting a home run as opposed to doing that. Like Walmart, all they've ever done is hit singles and doubles. They've never really hit a home run. If you think about it, they opened it one store at a time.
Yeah.
They squeezed this and that out. And it's, after 75 years, they have this massive company.
Yeah.
We, the business, have always tried to hit a home run. So we'll spend money trying to hit this home run, but we won't spend money automating our land files so that we can save $20,000 a year or whatever the case may be. And so I think that's why we've been poorly run as an industry, is because we got money for being a hedge.
Yeah. Which I think also ties in, and from my kind of position where I'm at in the sandbox that I play in, because of the cyclical nature, and most companies are, their success is measured every 90 days and they're looking for home runs to keep drawing in this investment or the investors, or to gain Wall Street's confidence. But that's one thing I've noticed, in my space, is that because of the cyclical nature, a company, an oil field service company, is somewhat reluctant. And I say smaller oil service company, are reluctant to deploy a significant amount or a considerable amount of capital to, whether it be automate, to adopt technology. And it's like, we'll do a little bit, because if we invest a bunch of money and then in 6 months, when we haven't realized, or there's no return on this invested capital, well, then all of a sudden rig count drops. Well, then we're left holding the bag, and then investors are like, what the heck? So and again, this is pure observation. It's not like one company specific, but it's like we always do just enough to like make it to the next cycle without really looking, okay, let's look at a 20-year horizon, because we just don't know what's going to happen in 6 months. And so I feel like a lot of times we're going after these, and again, this is from my stance on oil field services. Some do it better than others, but until we can figure out a way, and I have some ideas, is like, how can we protect ourselves against these cyclical, because these cycles happening? Because I think it's inevitable. They're going to happen. Right. And the intensity and the frequency are only getting more. I guess the frequency is getting, well, especially with COVID, more. The intensity is getting more intense. But it's like, how can we get ourselves to the next level and adopt technologies, deploy capital, without always being worried about like, oh, is the operator going to pay for this? And is the operator going to pay us more because we're trying to prove this new technology? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess in saying all of that, I think we have a long way to go. And I think the cyclical, if we can figure out a way to reduce our exposure to these cyclical natures, and I think a lot of that's going to come through automation, being able to scale up and scale down without having to hire and fire thousands of people all the time, because we're running on spreadsheets and we have everyone punching numbers in. That to me, I think is going to be a game changer. And like, to plug the sponsor again, is like things like that can ultimately make you more profitable, because margins over time have just gotten beat down. And so I know in the oilfield service space, like overall margins, they're hard to get. And because of unconventionals is a lot of times commoditized. And I'm saying this generally, I'm sure people are going to argue, because they always do, but in general, unconventionals has somewhat commoditized oilfield services because it's assembly line. You know what I mean? It's just like go, go, go. You can sell new technology, but chances are a lot of people are selling new technology. So is it really new, or does it really differentiate you? Some yes, some no. But anyway, that's I digress. I'm just kind of thinking out loud on that front. But the cyclical nature of our business ultimately inhibits our ability to get to where I think we need to be.
Yeah, and imagine what it does for young talent, right? Because I mean, at least the whole time in my career, the average age of the employees in the oil and gas business, if last year it was 42, the next year it's 43. I mean,
Yeah.
attracting that young talent, if you think about it, you're going to a kid coming out of college saying, "You're really bright, you're really smart, come work here." And you can get fired anytime the Saudis decide to pump more oil. Can't really figure out what they're doing this morning, but
Right.
you can get fired. And oh, by the way, it may take you 25 years to get promoted to vice president because we have this tenure track. I mean, we're really bad about tenure. And there's some justification for tenure.
Sure.
I don't know that I want a guy in charge of a rig who's been there 2 years.
Of course.
So, I mean, it's a dangerous industry. So you do need to have experience. But at the same time, I like to tell this story. There was a big data group at one of the large E&P companies, and a 23-year-old data scientist literally messing around on a computer was digging into stuff and figured out just through data, probably had never even been into the field, figured out if the pumper never put their truck in reverse, it would reduce wear and tear by 45% on the trucks.
Okay.
It would reduce accidents by 75%.
No way.
And so they redid all the pumpers routes where you never had to park and go in reverse. You were always able to drive forward.
No kidding.
And it panned out exactly how she said. She's like, that's it.
Huh.
And, she figured this out and it saved all this money. And she got a 5% raise that year. Where if she's at Amazon or Microsoft, she may be head of the marketing group, at 25. Yeah. And so I think that's another element of this boom and bust is, okay, you're going to take all the downside of a bust, but you're not going to get the upside of stuff. And again, just adds to anxiety and everything else.
Yeah, no.
And God, I'm such a buzzkill. Here we are, buzzkill. But
the buzzkill hour. but I mean, it's again, these are all the challenges that we have to face and overcome. And I think you talk about talent. I mean, again, I know a lot of folks on the drilling contractor side. The drilling fluids world. To get folks outside of college or coming out of college, or even folks that maybe have come from rural America that are just hardworking, good Americans, to get them excited about oil and gas is extremely tough. And back in the day, and this is one of the reasons I got into oil and gas, because as a roughneck, when I'm 18, I could go make double what my buddies are going to go make at working for whatever, some retail store, or God forbid going to college. That was the last thing on my mind. And I was like, well, I can go make $75,000 a year as an 18-year-old with like a barely passing high school grades. Sign me up. But nowadays, that's not even the case. And that's, I think, a lot of the challenge. Again, and I'm talking more specifically to like field folks, is that before they could entice them with paying them like a ton of money. Now a kid can go, say, work at, I don't know, Below the Belt. Well, that's a Canadian retail store. But anyway, some retail store, have a side hustle on their phone and make just as much as a rig hand going to West Texas. And to your point, sacrificing their life every day, or 6 months of the year. So again, in talking to drilling contractors, like they're having a hell of a time trying to find people. The EIA and all these other models show, okay, we're going to try and increase U.S. oil production to like 12.4, 12.5 by the end of the year, which is probably going to require a lot more rigs than we have now. I think we're at close to 800, 770 something.
775, I think.
Yeah,
like that,
and to get the hands required to service to hand all these rigs is it's going to be super challenging. And so it's like, talking to a lot of the people there, it's like, well, we can't entice them by a bunch of money because our day rates are what they are and our margins are, we're trying to hang on or recoup from COVID, the pandemic and how we got beat down on pricing and everything else. And so we're in this like funny position. It's like we want to ramp up, but yet we don't, like, where are we going to find all the talent and the hands that are actually willing to come out and work hard on a drilling rig?
Well, and think about it. Let's overlay Wall Street on this, because it always comes back to the money. When they say it's not about the money, it's about the money, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
If you're trading, your public stock trades at 3 times EBITDA, how much incentive do you have to go get more EBITDA? None, right? If you're trading at 10 times EBITDA, I'm going to go get you a hell of a lot more EBITDA. We're going to go drill wells, all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And with oil and gas companies and the service companies trading at kind of historically low multiples, there is no incentive to go spend that money to get the field hand. There is no incentive to go drill more oil. So that's why I think something's going to have to give. We're either going to have to see multiples double in the U.S. for more people to go be willing to drill, because we're going to need this oil. Say what they want, we're not getting rid of oil anytime soon. Or conversely, prices are going to double.
Right.
They just have to, because we don't have the supply. So there's something there that has to give.
Right. In sort of on that, but pivoting a little bit with regards to energy, and I think we may have had this conversation in another sort of conversation, but have you had any core beliefs around energy that you've changed your mind on over the last few years? I mean, with regards to the goal to replace fossil fuels and this whole EV adoption. I mean, we're going through this interesting transition, or whatever you want to call it. Everyone has their own name: energy expansion, energy this, energy that. But for lack of better terms, this energy transition. Have you had any sort of principal beliefs change, or have you kind of looked at things through a different lens as we move forward into this goal of being net zero?
So I grew up in life. I read Milton Friedman's Free to Choose, a libertarian. I had the COO of the IPAA on the podcast yesterday, and we were talking about it. I made it all the way through John Galt's speech in Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand.
Oh,
if you haven't read that book, I mean, it's like 1,000 pages of the same shit right over and over again. So anyway, I've always been this free market guy.
Yeah.
And I've always thought, you need free trade, reduce barriers and all that. You go through a pandemic where you can't get N95 masks because they're all made in China. You've got China making your medicines. You go through that. I'm not a Trump guy, so I don't want to sound like, but Trump was right about we need industry here.
Sure.
And so kind of filter that through our business. I mean, I used to say things like, I don't think we need a tax. I mean, U.S. companies just need to compete with the rest of the world for selling oil.
Yeah.
No, we need to protect our industry here. I mean, we really were at risk because we'd become so dependent on our supply chain with the rest of the world. So things like, I don't know exactly what a policy might be that I changed my mind on, but just, hey, let's try not to buy energy from authoritarian dictators that kill people. That might be a place to start. And if we've got to pay a little bit more for gasoline, I actually think that is worth it. Given the security nature of this. Because I mean,
right.
I don't want to sound too tinfoil hat, and who knows, but did China purposely leak COVID to see how we'd respond?
Sure.
Maybe. I mean, it at a minimum, I think it did escape from a lab. I think we've all I think we've all kind of agreed that's probably what, and whether it was naturally occurring or created, it's not too far a stretch to think the next time it's going to be worse. And so that's the big fundamental belief I think that's changed kind of with COVID and thinking about energy.
Well, it exposed our dependencies on offshore everything, which to your point of bringing back bringing as much as we can here domestically. I think there's a bit of a trade-off there, but I think in the long run it's probably the safest bet. And I mean, again, another thing to kind of tie into that is, we go through that, and then we go into this Russia-Ukraine thing and seeing gas markets completely fundamentally change. Here in the U.S., I mean, we're sitting on a gold mine. And that was one thing I was wanting to ask you about is you had Greg Kane on recently,
right?
Which was like threw me for a loop. I was not it was quite fascinating, his stories.
I will say
and everything he's gone through. Go ahead.
I've known Greg 20 years.
Okay.
And I know that Greg believes every single word he said on both podcasts he's done with me. He did December of 2020, he did the original Buddhagate podcast. And then we did the most recent one a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Greg really believes it. I will say this in defense of Greg. People are like, oh, he's crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about and all that. there is something weird about the infrastructure build and the build going on along the Gulf Coast that I'm not sure is easily explainable. I mean, I'm sure there's an explanation. But
Well, I encourage everyone out there to go listen to it on Chuck's podcast.
So his punchline is basically twofold. There's a lot of infrastructure being built along the Gulf Coast in terms of capacity to refine, ship, whatever. And then, and you think about that and you go, okay, that's either volumes coming from the mid-continent or from the Permian.
Mm-hmm.
And then specifically when you kind of look in East Texas and Madison County in and around that area, what you see, and Greg has like jumped fence. He's an old school land scout. Like he jumps the fence, he takes a picture.
Yeah.
A lot of crazy things have happened, but he has identified pipelines being put in that aren't on Railroad Commission maps. And I've seen pictures of it. So, it's crazy. But what happens is if you look kind of at the map, from the north through East Texas, basically you have 6 or 7 pipelines kind of fan out around Madison County, and then they gather back, call it around Cleveland, Texas.
Yeah.
If these are volumes from the Permian Basin, I mean, you just loop pipelines, right? You don't go and get multiple right-of-ways and do all this crazy stuff. If it's coming from the mid-continent, same thing. You just build a bigger pipeline and you stick it right next to the existing pipeline. And the fact it's fanning out and these big pipes are being put in the ground, that is weird.
Right.
I will give Greg that. That is weird.
And so what is
so his take is, his original take back in December of 2020 was EOG had figured out in the Buddha they had the largest onshore oil field ever discovered, and they were being quiet about it to go build the infrastructure. And then his follow-up to that is there's a play going on in kind of Leon County, Robertson County, the Deep Bossier, and Comstock's big in there, Acheon's big in there.
Yeah.
And they're drilling these big, huge gas wells. And so his whole take is, this is this fundamentally huge supply source. That's why they're building all this infrastructure, and the market will catch up at some point and figure out that he's right.
Wow. It was and it was interesting to hear that. And again, I was kind of driving and doing things, but I was listening as I was doing different things. But his story about how he felt like the government was onto him, to which then he was being almost like pushed out of the oil and gas industry, and he couldn't get a job.
He was kidnapped and he was drugged.
And then his phone, like he couldn't
being monitored.
And I was like, what?
Like I said, I mean, I've known Greg. Greg would not lie to me. I've known Greg 20 years and all that. I don't know that stuff happened, but I know Greg believes it happened. Yeah. I will say that, because
we'll talk about mental health. That'll throw a guy for a loop.
Yeah.
Jesus.
It really would. It really would. So anyway, it's a wild story, and
it is.
And I
feel for the guy, man. I kind of felt bad for him a little bit.
I do too. But the flip side too is it's such a wild story, and people are like, oh, come on, why do you let it on the podcast? It's like,
why not?
Hey, it's his story. He really believes it. I won't let people knowingly lie on my podcast.
Sure.
But I'll let them come tell their story.
But again, if you look at it like the fundamentals of what's happening in the infrastructure, like it has to make you kind of question and be like, okay, well, what is going on? Let's dive into it.
I've gotten some DMs through Twitter with, hey, I work at a refinery on the Gulf Coast, and whenever we bring in a new set of supply, the pipeline's always like marked whoever the operator is.
Right,
so it'll be like Exxon or, whoever's bringing the supply. He goes, we have Project X pipeline being brought in right now. And when I ask about it, people say, shut up.
Yeah.
And,
so it's definitely,
there's something weird there.
Yeah. Right. And I'm sure.
And I'm not a midstream guy, so it could be simple explanations.
Right. Yeah. Who knows? Let's talk a little bit, technology. You have a pretty good exposure here, especially to the Wildcatters and all the fancy things happening on the technology side. Are there any emerging technologies that really excite you as we move into 2023 and kind of beyond?
So I'm a note of disclosure. I'm also on the advisory board of Montrose Lane, the small little energy technology venture capital fund.
Cool.
So,
Okay, cool.
Advisory board, I think, is kind of code for you're the older brother.
Yeah,
It's not like I'm in the weeds, but I get phone calls and keep in touch with the guys.
Yeah,
on a fairly regular basis. The thing that worries me about technology and just kind of given where we are in the world that we need more supply. I don't see anything that in 5 years could materially change the supply outlook. So,
okay.
and let me tell you what I mean by that. I mean, we're sitting there in 2005 to 2007, and we are just crushing it in natural gas. We're drilling horizontal, fracking. We figured out how to make the shales work. The Barnett's starting to hum. You drilled an oil well back then, came on 1,000 barrels a day. 2 days later, it was down to 10 barrels of oil a day. It was the kiss of death.
Mm.
But at least when you were sitting around, you could talk yourself into, if we figure out what we were doing in natural gas and figure out how to prop the formation open in oil, that could be a game changer. Now, did we see that oil? Was I sitting there in 2007 saying that oil production is going to double in the United States over the next 10 to 15 years? No, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
But at the time, if you told me that was going to happen, I say, oh, okay, well, it would be because of this. I literally don't see anything out there where if we, added 35% to U.S. oil production, I don't see any technology that could be driving that. The one thing I've seen is I don't even know. I think it's radio waves. There's this radio wave, high intense radio wave frac that's supposedly just rubbleizing the hell out of rock and leads to greater recovery factors and higher IPs. But I've heard kind of every testing they've done, it goes out about 2 inches and it clogs back up. But outside of that, that's what I worry about. So there's a ton. We could sit here for the next 2 weeks talking about nickels and dimes type technologies that are really cool. Like, there's so much digitization to do across our industry. I mean,
which I think ties into the efficiency of how we operate, but nothing.
I don't see a game changer. Do you see a game changer? You're closer to it than I am.
I mean, again,
let's take this. We are at 19 million barrels a day of U.S. production in, call it 2033.
Yeah.
What caused that?
Yeah.
Outside of price running and we just threw rigs at it. I mean, was there a technology that caused it?
Other than a massive play offshore or something. I mean, again,
that's just finding the rock.
Yeah. Well, of course, but to switch your point, no, I don't. I mean, is there? Yeah, I don't know, because ultimately, it's tough, right? Because if you look at like all the tier 1 acreage and you look at a lot of the, production rates per, well drilled, looking at some of the EIA data that they've put out over time, I think it peaked maybe a few years ago, but that's slowly dropping off. And so people are now like, the abundance of the cheap barrel is not necessarily there anymore. And so it's like, we're having to go on this fringe acreage and now this consolidation's happening to try and so
what's interesting about that data? I'm sorry I cut you off,
no.
But I find this fascinating because I did that same thing. So let's go back to, I don't know, pick a number, 2012, 2014, and look, all the way to 2018. Initial production rates out of oil wells were up 30%, 40% each year, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you were just getting better. Yeah, you were drilling longer, bigger fracs, figuring it out. And then call it like 18 and 19 or 17 and 18, somewhere around there. It was up, call it 20-ish%. So it was definitely the acceleration rate was declining. It was still up.
Yeah.
If you took out Exxon and Chevron drilling in the Permian, and the thesis there is they were just late to the game, right? Okay. They watched everybody else do it. Kind of whatever it was, 17, 18 or 18 and 19. It was actually the IP per well was declining 10%.
Really?
And so basically,
they propped it up for longer.
Yeah, the production increases we saw doing the global numbers was really just Chevron and Exxon deciding to drill their really good acreage in the Permian. But if you looked at just kind of pure technological impacts, we peaked in like 16.
No kidding. Fascinating.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. No, it is. Which again, it's like we're gonna have to figure something out, because with declines and now that this sort of data coming out, it's like I don't know how we're gonna get to. Well, I guess like even to get to 13 million here in the U.S., which like a good, I don't know how much of that is Alaska. I think it's like 500,000 a day, but in the lower 48 unconventionals, I don't know how we're gonna get more than that. And if you look at global oil demand, which is arguably going to peak in anywhere from 2 to 10 years, depending on which report you look at, but the demand's still going to be there.
I'll take the over on that.
Do what?
I'll take the over on that. We're not peaking anytime soon.
I know. I did a poll on LinkedIn. It was like, when do you expect, peak demand to hit? And, it's just the comical relief I got from everyone's inputs, which again, no one knows, but
right.
I would argue too, is like, it's not anytime soon. Although saying all that, I mean, and again, maybe I'm somewhat biased, but like, I just can't see a case unless we have demand destruction, especially with China and India, where oil with the supply and what we're looking at, like, I don't see a case for lower commodity prices. And cause I don't think OPEC has the capacity to just all of a sudden open the taps.
Oh, they're tapped out.
Yeah. I mean, so it's like, are we in like a very long bull cycle? Like what are you kind of macro projecting? What's your thought?
So this is wild. So I'll get these numbers wrong because I haven't looked at them in a while. But if you looked kind of, 2000 to 2015, something like that. Basically, and I'll kind of make up those numbers, but the relative of these numbers is more important than the actual number. I want to say in the kingdom, the Saudis had 50 rigs running, 75 rigs running, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that made sense, right? A well would bust. They need to drill another one, maintain pressure, whatever they had to do, right? From 15 to 19, there were points in there where 250 rigs were running in the kingdom. And we know this data is all messed up because nobody reports, nobody tells the truth. They hide it. But the relative, i.e. 5 times the amount of rigs were running in a time when we had like $40 oil. We averaged in there, $45 oil. That just tells you there's no excess capacity there. There is no turn on the tap.
Right.
They have it. They have a massive resource, but they got to go spend dollars to get it. So you don't have that. United States, we've talked about. There's no real. We got 775 rigs running. We trade at 3 times EBITDA, maybe 4 times EBITDA. So there's no real incentive to go grow that. I talked to the CFO of one of the large E&P companies. I go, "How's it going?" He goes, "Man, I send out dividend checks. Everybody's happy. It's great. I ain't gonna drill another well for the rest of my life."
Yeah,
but,
right.
So you have that. So it comes down to demand, and believe it. So I was a big bear. I thought the recession happened this year. I mean, like Great Depression level stuff. I mean, I thought Europe was going to drag us. Because, people don't realize 20% of the S&P 500 earnings come out of Europe. And when you look at the FANG stocks, like, the high flyer technologies, it's even more of their earnings come out of Europe. And Europe literally was at the point last summer where the Germans were shutting down industries because they were storing natural gas because they were going to have to heat homes this winter so people wouldn't die. I literally thought all industry in Europe was going to have to be shut down. And we got bailed out by global warming. We had the warmest winter in Europe since 1881.
Yeah.
So God really might be European. I get this. So, I mean, like Goldman Sachs has even come out and taken a European recession off the table. They think Europe's going to grow, I don't know, 0.5 or 0.6%. So not a lot.
Yeah.
But, if we get through that, barring some weird COVID reemergence thing. And, the history, the thing that got me about Fauci is Fauci could have come out and said, this is a new virus, but that's like saying this is a new baby. Yes, it's a new baby, but we've had a lot of babies on this planet. We know a lot about babies. So generally speaking, here's what's going to happen. He didn't, he caused hysteria at every corner. Generally what happens in every pandemic is the variant is less virile. Because at the end of the day, your guard is up, you're isolating the host if they get sick, And if it's going to kill you, you're going to get isolated and the virus will die with the host. And so the history of every pandemic is, the variants get less and less viral, except for one, and that was the Spanish flu. And the unique situation that happened there is we had trench warfare going on in World War I, right? We would build these trenches, we'd shoot at each other. And when somebody got sick in the trench, what did we do? We put them in an ambulance. We drove them 200 miles to a hospital that had 500 people in it, and they infected everyone. So that actually was the opposite. You weren't isolating the host. You were bringing the host to a greater population. So that's why we had 2 years of it. So I mean, I can't see a variant of COVID that's going to be more deadly and shut things down. So you start doing that. I mean, how do we get away? I mean, my whole career, oil production grows, or oil demand grows 1.5% a year. Right? It just does.
Yeah.
I mean, I think outside the pandemic year, 2008, 2009, we were down like 800,000 barrels a day because we had the great credit crash.
Sure.
So I don't know how we're in anything but a huge super cycle boom.
Yeah. Talking about like new technology or something that'll ultimately allow us to increase supply to meet this demand growth. Do you think there's anywhere in the world that, say, frac technology hasn't really, like, ultimately, do you think there's another, call it Permian or an Eagle Ford or I don't know all the Middle Eastern ones, but I mean, could that in theory ultimately unlock, call it, I don't know, million barrels a day plus?
So let's look at that. We have this unique experiment in the United States where we're the only place on the planet that we have private ownership of minerals, right? Yeah. I mean, however many 100 some odd years ago, Judge Brown or whatever his name was said, Farmer Bob, he owns it all the way to the goddamn center of the, of the earth, and whatever comes out, it's his, So we have that. We have, we can all debate this, but we have as entrepreneurial a spirit in America as any place else. Yeah. We have the most advanced capital markets the world's ever seen. And we have technology-wise in the oil field, I'll put that on par with putting a man on the moon type technology. We do that really, really well. Can't digitize our land files, but goddamn it, we can drill 3.5 miles horizontally and frack the shit out of something, right?
Yeah.
So we put all of that together across what is arguably as good as any resource base has ever been. People forget, they talk about how great Saudi is. Well, we had Saudi. It's why we won World War II. It's called the East Texas oil field, right? So all I'm saying is we've gone through that. We now have a really good handle on what the cost structure is for fracking shale. Does shale exist anywhere else in the world? Yeah, it does. It's going to cost at least as much in America. And I would probably say it's going to cost 150 to 175% of it because you're going to have different regulatory environments. Is Schlumberger really going to put a fleet in the middle of somewhere where a Nigerian chief can grab it? No. And, so you're going to have issues so the answer is yes. I think the more nuanced way to ask your question and what you were really saying is at what cost could you do it?
Sure.
And I don't think it's at a cheap enough cost where we're going to have $40 oil.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's crazy to think about. On the last thing on moving away from oil and going to gas, do you think we're in, I think we're at like 350, 360 today. That's come down pretty considerably. Once Freeport's exporting goes, that's going to maybe shift some things.
By the way, what happened there?
I don't know. I read the headlines, man. I
read it too. It's just weird.
Yeah, I don't know.
We're delayed a little more. We're delayed a little more.
Yeah. It'd be interesting. Again, I don't know. Because it was supposed to be January. Now it's February. Now
it just keeps it. And you never get a straight answer exactly on what happened. And maybe I just don't know enough about it. But my tinfoil hat's been on for a while, and so
you never know.
Was it a massive cyber attack or something? Anyway, it's just strange. The thing I've heard kind of from industry stuff that maybe the reason it's clouded in a little bit of secrecy is just they have such young, inexperienced workers running around that somebody did something stupid and they don't want to have to fess up to it. But anyway,
I mean, that's could be, right?
yeah.
I mean, we're running into that all the time. It's just
Yeah.
the younger,
Anyway, didn't
less
mean to
inexperienced.
divert you off.
No, but
yeah, that's wild. I don't get it.
But do you think, do you think we're in a position where we're going to see elevated gas prices for an extended period of time, or do you think, we're like, where do you think gas is going? I guess is the question.
It's wild. So you're young. God, I felt old saying that.
You're so young.
Let's just cue up "Glory Days" by Bruce Springsteen in the back. Glory Days. No, you're young, but like 20 years ago, kind of before the shale boom, all that mattered to natural gas price was the weather. I mean, Chesapeake and Aubrey hired these NASA-level scientists to go study the weather so he could figure out when he should hedge and all that. Weather is all that mattered. And then all of a sudden you're busting shales up and weather didn't matter. You never, ever have heard a weather report talk about natural. Well, it's back. Yeah. Now weather matters again because we do kind of, we basically, fill up all during the summer and then we withdraw all during the winter.
Yeah. And
weather now matters. And so it's really hard to guess kind of the weather on stuff.
Yeah.
I will say this. I mean, I think we've got enough gas in the Marcellus and the Haynesville that we could supply the world for 50 years if we wanted to. If we committed to all the export, put the pipelines in and that. So
the Northeast, and then we have some activity up there, and so we're tied in pretty heavily. And I know the digital Wildcatters, you guys, are tied in with, or have good conversations with people who understand that side of it. Just the takeaway capacity and then just the infrastructure there, they are up against quite a bit of headwind, aren't they not? Like in terms of pipeline capacity and their willingness to actually, deploy enough capital and power to increase.
Well, they have big bad government just flat out telling them no. Yeah. I mean, if you think about this, Massachusetts had days this winter where a third of the heating in that state was done by heating oil. I mean, heating oil is crappy for the environment, right? I mean, I don't mean to trash heating oil, but it's a hydrocarbon.
There's a reason why we moved away from it.
Yeah, we import LNG into Massachusetts at the Everett facility. And it's, and could we send, and it's hard to get a good number on exactly how much we're importing there kind of post-pandemic, but pre-pandemic, it was, 50, 60 BCF a year or something like that. At one point we imported Russian LNG there. I mean, is that just not crazy? When Toby Rice has more natural gas than he knows what to do with, we could run a pipeline up there. I bet if we put oil-filled Rando in charge of it, he could have a pipeline built in 6 months.
Oil-filled Rando.
He could have it built there, and we could supply Massachusetts, and and it's the government saying no. So that's kind of the really hard part about the natural gas story is just what is our government going to do? Because those artificial constraints like that,
Well, and which I think supports a good case for the Haynesville to be long and strong too. Now, I mean, but with where they're at positioned, like close to the Gulf and all the rest of it, like they have the Haynesville to me is kind of a unique breed in itself. It was kind of died off, and then now it's just screaming. I think next to the Eagle Ford, it's got the third highest rig count in the for all major basins. And anyway,
$9 gas will do that.
Well, no kidding. So,
and it sounds like just they've polled a lot of the public companies and kind of where they are on rigs running in the Haynesville is like, we're watching it, but at 350 we keep going.
Okay, that's good to know. Going back to sort of the public side of things, last year, everyone did, or I say everyone, a lot of people did really well, paid down a ton of debt. This year, I don't suspect profits are going to be near as good as they were last year, generally speaking. But do you think, where do you think a lot of the free cash flow is going to go? Do you think it's going to go to the investors like your CFO buddy said, or do you think it's going to go into drilling more, or is it going to be kind of a good balance? Do you have any kind of thought on that?
Yeah, it kind of, and I got to credit Brad Olson for this. This is more Brad than it is me. He runs a long only hedge fund called Recurrent. And Brad's take that I've alluded to a few times on the podcast is just show me your incentive and I'll tell you what's going to happen. And so at 3 times EBITDA, you're going to send checks to your shareholders and you're not going to do anything. At 10 times EBITDA, you're going to go pick up rigs.
Yeah.
Because that's ultimately, what your share price is and how it trades is your incentive. Because Brad tells this pretty eloquent story, and I'm going to booger it all up, but he's basically like, so you're telling me that all these idiot CEOs in the shale revolution are now geniuses because of capital discipline? No, their incentives changed.
Right.
When you were paid $50,000 per acre, guess what you paid? You paid $49,999 per acre because you got a markup in your stock price. So you'd buy everything.
Yeah. And
when the market tells you no, I'm going to value you at 3 times cash flow. Guess what? You're not going to buy any more acreage.
Yeah.
So it's I think that's really just kind of watch the incentives. If we see multiples stay low, it's kind of crazy right now. If you look, and I'll get these numbers somewhat wrong, but I think energy accounts for 5% of the S&P 500 market value.
Okay.
But 15% of the earnings.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean,
it's an interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then, I mean, you just work through the math, and that means we trade at low multiples.
Yeah.
Low multiples mean no activity.
So for those who are listening that maybe don't understand the lingo, what do you mean by trading at, say, 3 times EBITDA? Okay. Can you summarize that for people that may not understand?
Yeah. See, I'm so cool. I talk the lingo.
Yeah, right.
No, so basically what EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So revenue minus the expenses out in the field, minus your G&A, the people to run the place. So that number is the denominator. The value of your equity, so the shares outstanding times your share price, plus your debt is your enterprise value. That's the numerator. So if your stock is $1 billion and you have $500 million of debt, 1.5 up there, and if you've got $500 million a year of EBITDA, you're trading at 3 times.
Gotcha.
That's the multiple, and then you can do a whole lot. Sometimes you look at the equity value divided by the net income, because net income is actually after interest. So you take the debt off of the numerator because your denominator takes into account paying the interest on that debt. And so you look at earnings multiples and you see kind of 15 times net income and stuff. So
gotcha.
That's kind of multiples.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And it's stuff that I, did in school, but I haven't been exposed to it in real life. So it's kind of a good refresher for me, but it's, I've learned to kind of really appreciate the finance things. Actually, speaking of finance, have you watched the Bernie Madoff documentary on Netflix?
No, but goodness. So many people around here.
Dude, it's insane. So you obviously know all about it, but it's.
So this is crazy.
If you get time, check it out.
This is crazy. One of my LPs back when I was at Kane got taken by Bernie Madoff. Oh. So they lost money with him. So they were the most diligent company in terms of going through due diligence. And so they would come to Houston. They'd make sure we had offices. They'd want to see files, all this. We offered them a co-invest. It's like, hey, this oil and gas company needs $200 million. The fund's going to put up $150. We need another $50. And we're going out to our investors. Who wants in?
Yeah.
Swear to God, they hired a landman, even though I don't think they could have spelt landman if you spotted them land M-A. But, God bless them. They hired a landman to go to the company and go through the files and then go to the courthouse and just check that they actually own the title. And it was all in response to, we got taken by Bernie Madoff. Wow. I mean, Kevin Bacon lost, his net worth. I think he lost $50 million with him. I mean, it's just crazy. And you know what's so crazy about that? The dude literally had one bank account at
Chase, right?
At JP Morgan Chase. Yeah, whatever.
The 703 account or something.
How crazy is that? All money went in. I mean,
I don't know. But and then even in the documentary is that I didn't realize that JP Morgan Chase has paid out a ton of money in multiple different lawsuits because of fraud. And it's like, yeah, okay. But no, again, I don't have firsthand experience in the finance world, but I try and pay attention and learn as much as I can because I just find it fascinating. And then when I came across that documentary, I was just absolutely blown away. And then just to see how the family responded to it, and it's a sad story, but it's very interesting to see how someone at that level, and like I think it was like 20 some odd years, it ended up being like a $80 billion Ponzi scheme. Like it's just crazy.
So
man.
I mean, here's the public service announcement. You want someone that is slightly above average as an investor. If someone is beating the index of some sort by a large number, they're taking more risk than they're representing to you. If they're not as volatile as the market is, they are taking more risk than they should. And so if somebody if I do this, if I walk in and say, man, I'm generating 30% rates of return on, this, and the index is like 10, I'm lying to you.
Right.
I'm cheating you. I mean, if I come in and say, hey, the last 25 quarters, I've beaten the average, 18 out of the 25 times, and the average has been up 12%, and I'm at 13.2. You're like, okay, I can buy that.
Right.
You may be smarter than the average bear. If you're 2x it, they're stealing.
Right.
It's
I
easy.
know.
It's not that hard.
Yeah, I know.
There are no free lunches in life.
That's so true. And yeah, to think, I mean, that could be a whole nother podcast just to talk about the psychological issues he was dealing with. But nonetheless, Chuck, this has been good. I feel like we could keep rapping all day. The last question I do have, and then I want you to tell us about all the upcoming events for Digital Wildcatters. Is there anything, I mean, you're a pretty open book, but is there anything about yourself that not many people know about, whether it's any unique hobbies or anything like you do on the weekends that you kind of keep to yourself because it's just a personal interest? I mean, anything kind of unique?
Something that I hadn't talked about. People are like going, God, that fucker says everything. A story that I haven't told many people. Shoot.
Well, the celebrity stalker thing is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's
I mean, that's unique.
So a few people have heard this story. I like it though. It's the first time I ever met Bret Michael, because I have unnatural man love for Bret Michael of Poison.
Okay.
I mean, just beside myself, man love for him. And so like we get backstage and I walk in and I'm just kind of like bubbling. I'm like, hey, Bret, I know this is kind of gay, but can I have a hug? And he looked at me and goes, dude, that's totally gay, but bring it on.
Yeah.
And anyway, dude hugged me. So anyway, Bret, I've been backstage and hung out with Bret 5 times. I don't have his phone number. He doesn't know who I am. But when I walk in, it's kind of like, oh, that's the restraining order guy we need to get. But
so what about him kind of just like interests you?
And I'm going to say this with love, even though it's going to sound like I'm trashing the guy. I have a picture on the second floor of my house. I've kind of my rock and roll room. I've got this bar and everything. And it's from a Bret Michael concert when him performing solo. He is wearing a Bret Michael t-shirt. He has a Bret Michael hat on. He has a Bret Michael bandana. His picture is on the drummers. He has Bret Michael banners all across the backdrop.
No way.
And I mean, just as shameless a promoter as there is. And I've always just said, that dude's my hero.
Right.
That guy's awesome.
You got to love yourself before you can love anyone else.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. One other celebrity story, because I've told the Bret story to some people before. Worst celebrity encounter was actually, believe it or not, Dan Aykroyd. So really? I walk up to Dan Aykroyd. It's the opening of the House of Blues in Houston, and he's there and he performs. And I go up to him. I go, oh, Dan, I'm a big fan. Ghostbusters, Dr. Detroit, love you. He goes, what the hell do you want? I go, can we grab a picture? And he goes, yeah, you got 30 seconds. And I go, man, this is going to be great. And he goes, 29, 28. And I'm like, oh, I'm fumbling with my phone. So I get it. I snap the picture. And he looks at me and says, get the fuck out.
What?
And you look at the picture, it looks like we're brothers. I mean, it's just the greatest picture
but like
in the
the
world.
context behind it all is just like not what you would think.
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. I would have never thought. But
no, I wouldn't either. But
well,
there you go.
That's sorry. I love that.
I feel like I disappointed you. Anyway.
No, Chuck, come on. Tell us about Digital Wildcatters. We got some events coming up.
So Digital Wildcatters, doing some cool stuff this year. We're going to have our Empower event again, March 8th and 9th. That's basically Bitcoin mining for the energy business. We have a thesis around here that at the end of the day, if you generate power, you're going to be the ones that Bitcoin mine. You're not going to, are we going to have standalone Bitcoin miners and all? No, I mean, if I have the cheap natural gas, and at a minimum, we believe that everybody in the energy business needs to have a strategy for Bitcoin mining. Doesn't mean you have to do it, but like you go get a lease. You're going to lease land from Farmer Bob. You better have a clause in there that talks about what happens if you decide to Bitcoin mine. Does he get paid on the Bitcoin revenue? Does he get paid natural gas? Anyway, so you need to have a strategy for it. So that's a great conference. It's going to be at the 713 venue in downtown Houston.
Yeah.
We're going to do 4 energy tech nights this year. The first one, I think, is February 9th.
Oh, yeah.
That's in Houston.
Yeah.
We're going to do Midland. We're going to do Oklahoma City. We're going to Oklahoma.
Cool.
Hopefully they'll let us back out, but we're going to go to Oklahoma, and we're going to do Denver. And then in the fall, we'll have our Fuse conference again. And the point there is let's get everybody in the energy business together, renewables, oil and gas.
Yeah, that was a great event, man. I mean, they're all great. But
and Colin likes to talk about, let's have collisions. And we actually saw some stuff happening. I saw some renewables guys talking to some oil and gas guys. And the question was, hey, we're going to have to scale up our business. You guys have scaled up more than any other business on the planet. How do we do this? And we're just, if we truly are going to get rid of carbon, we're going to have to do that. We can't sit around and throw shit at each other.
Yeah. You know? And that's what I thoroughly commend you guys for doing, is really embracing the above all mentality. And it's like, let's collaborate and let's all focus on the North Star, which is providing affordable, abundant, and reliable energy to the world.
Yeah, and let's be good stewards while we do that. And then just on the personal front, we got Chuck Yates needs a job.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try. One of the things I'm going to try to do better this year is I'm really going to try to pull on the network and see if I can get some folks to come on the podcast that normally don't do podcasts.
That'd be huge.
And we'll see if we can get that done. Then I'm also going to do, I alluded to this on the first podcast of the year, I'm going to do an arc of Chuck Yates Needs a Wife. And that had originally kind of started out as this dating show for anyway.
Yeah.
But
that's great,
but where it's going to go is I'm actually going to talk about kind of this journey I went through kind of from, I think we were talking about it earlier, from sort of the middle of December to the end of December, trying to figure out my bullshit and all that. And so,
hey, you'll get it figured out.
It's going to have equal parts like Saturday Night Live skits that are going to be really funny.
No way.
But then I'll get real. I mean, I'll sit out with Priest Patrick by the fire and talk too much and share more than I should. So,
hey, you need to do it, man. It's not easy to pour it out, like we said. But no, I really genuinely appreciate your time. This
Absolutely.
has been an amazing conversation.
I love
what you're doing. Yeah, no, I've enjoyed it. And last but not least, I do need to mention Oil Patch. The Oil Patch. It's going to be your new daily energy news in 5 minutes or less. Speaking of Oklahoma, it's a group out of there that are doing it. From the latest breakthroughs to the most bizarre stories, they're going to be your go-to source for all things energy. Think Hustle or Morning Brew for energy. They're having a blast doing it. It's going to be entertaining. So please do them a favor and subscribe using the link in the show notes or go to theoilpatch.co. Appreciate the partnership there. And for everyone out there, always remember, everyone deserves access to energy, and we is greater than me. Thanks, everybody.